I'm there about to stick a needle in someone's arm, I definitely wouldn't want some of the attention in someone else. I want someone that is concentrated to what he's doing in that moment.
No distractions when you're coming at me with a sharp object.
I had people saying like, right now you're my best friend. I'm like, I know.
Today we have Stef with us. Stef works internally with me here at Trusted, but she is also a phlebotomist. So today we're going to get to know Stef a bit better and learn about her career as a phlebotomist. So Stef, why don't you just kind of give us a brief intro and a little bit about yourself, maybe where you're from, where you live, a fun hobby or something interesting about yourself.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. I'm Steph. I'm originally from Italy. Usually go by Steph because it's easier than Stefania. But I'm from there and I moved in the state about 6 years ago. I'm currently in North Carolina. One of the hobbies, but it's kind of weird, but I do Krav Maga during the week. It is a self-defense class. So Krav Maga gym is my go-to for hobbies right after work.
Awesome. Well, that's a couple fun facts about yourself. The fact that you're from Italy, and the fact that you're involved in those self-defense classes. So tell me about this beginning of your career and how you ended up becoming involved in phlebotomy.
Yeah, so as mentioned, I moved 6 years ago here. And when I did here, I just got out of high school when I was in Italy. So I came here, I already knew that I wanted to stay in the medical field, so just kind of started looking around what I could do while waiting for all the documents to be straight away. And I kind of stumbled across the phlebotomist career. I had a few options, phlebotomist, pharmacy tech. Started looking into this, started studying for certification and everything. And once finally I was able to find a job, I actually applied for a phlebotomy position at a donation center, plasma donation center, and end up working out. And they had a couple of positions open and they put me on the donor floor. And from there, I started working as a phlebotomist with
That's
my first
awesome.
position.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what's involved in actually becoming a phlebotomist? Like any sort of specific background or experience that you need in order to become certified?
I didn't have much experience to begin with. I did a certification, and the position that I applied for didn't require any prior experience. So I kind of got lucky on that. I know that most of the position might require some previous experience for you to have it. That was more of an outpatient. It didn't include all the skills and everything that a phlebotomist, maybe inpatient, might have, since it is a donation center. So what we do was a little different compared to maybe a hospital setting.
Yeah, that's interesting. What would you say are like the major differences in the day of a phlebotomist working in like an outpatient donation center versus maybe a phlebotomist who's working inpatient at a hospital?
Yeah, so for us, it wasn't just seeing the patient, taking blood samples. Of course, we were doing that as well, but it wasn't a daily. We just do daily blood sample whenever they were required. Usually it was once a month. We were required to take some blood sample just to make sure that the plasma was still good for us to use. Other than that, we had to screen the patient before it comes in. So we had to take all the temperature, their weight, the blood pressure, and then, of course, they go on the donor floor. We take the blood sample if required, attach them to a machine to donate, and then we would collect the plasma and actually take sample from the plasma to send out to company to test and make sure that the plasma was good to use.
Ah, interesting. And so working in that type of location, what were your hours like? Were you working normal business hours or extended hours? What was that like?
Well, the facility was open from 8 to 8. For us, it was a little different. Of course, you have to get there. If you work in the morning, you have to get there a couple of hours earlier to make sure that everything is set up. All the machines are calibrated and ready for donation. So usually when I work day shift, I was there around like 6:30 in the morning because I was opening once I became the phlebotomy lead on the floor. So I was there around 6:30 until 3:30 usually, and sometimes I would work like the afternoon, evening shift. So I would just go in around noon or one, and I would stay there until closing. So it kind of
Gotcha.
depends.
Gotcha. Well, I that's a pretty wide span of hours, but I know that doesn't include night shift. I know that there are some phlebotomy positions similar to nursing where you are working in like an inpatient facility where you are having there has to be someone there around the clock. So it's got to be a bit easier to find that work-life balance during those
Yeah,
daytime hours.
it was. We work weekend as well, every other weekend. But usually the latest that I've been there whenever we were busy was probably like 11 at night, but other than that, no more.
Yeah, not too bad then.
Yeah, no, it
Um,
wasn't bad.
yeah. What what were the most fulfilling or enjoyable parts about that job for you?
I like the environment of most of the people I work with. We were like two teams, as mentioned earlier. I became like the phlebotomy lead. So I had my own team and we had to coordinate to make sure that all our patients were like taken care of in the fast, but of course, like safe manner. I also enjoy get to know a lot of the donor we come in and they all had like different reason why we were doing that. So I kind of got to learn different people just try to give it extra cash just to have on the side. Some people actually need everything for their kids, groceries, whatever it might be. So every story that comes through it was always really nice to know.
Yeah, definitely. That's interesting. I feel like that's something that is kind of similar across a lot of patient-facing roles in healthcare is you really get to hear a lot of people's different stories and really connect with them on like a person-to-person level, which is fun and interesting.
Yeah, it was. You always have a good conversation for those few minutes that you were there with them and just keep an eye on them. Some conversation were pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. So on the flip side of the coin, what were did you have any challenges that you faced in that role or anything that you didn't love about that position?
Not much that I didn't love because I knew that it was coming with the job, but when it was getting like really busy in there, especially when I first started, after a little bit you get used to it. But when you first start, you find yourself in there and you see the queue that you have about like 50 people waiting and it's like overwhelming. So at the beginning, I always like need a couple of minutes, like I'm not even sure where to start right now until you figure out like, okay, I'm in this section. These are my donors. Let me figure this out and then proceed to help other out. And of course, you always have a hard conversation with, of course, donors who maybe might have problem during the donation, or maybe they're waiting like a little longer. We're starting to get frustrated. So those are always like was hard conversations and hard thing in everyone like job. But once you get everything figured out and trying to get in the rhythm of how everything works, it kind of get easier.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally understand that. I used to be a nurse in the ER and it was tough when we were just so busy and people were having to wait a long time to be seen because you do the best you can to get to everyone as fast as you can. But, I think that the reality is in a lot of these healthcare settings, they're busy. And so you
Yeah.
have to learn quickly, you have to navigate those challenging conversations. There's a bit of that like customer service involved in those. So yeah, that can definitely be challenging to deal with, especially when you're new and looking at that queue of patients.
Yeah. Sometimes it's like, okay, I'm not gonna look at the queue to see how many people in total. I'm gonna go one by one, take care of everyone. Because if I start looking at the total number, then it's just too much.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love that perspective of you're with the patient or the donor that you're with, you're giving your attention to them, and then when you move on to the next one, they'll get your attention. So I think that as a patient, that's what I would want, right? Like I don't want my phlebotomist or anyone on the care team really thinking about all of the patients behind me. I want them just focusing on like what needs to happen with me when they're with me.
Yeah, exactly. Even because I'm there about to stick a needle in someone's arm. So I definitely wouldn't want someone with attention in somewhere else, but they're still there with a needle trying to put it in my arm. I want someone who is concentrated to what he's doing in that moment to make sure that I do my job correctly.
Yes, exactly. No distractions when you're coming at me with a sharp
Yeah.
object.
I had people saying like, "Right now you're my best friend." I'm like, I know.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Um, what was your training like? I know that you said that like it was really busy when you first started, but like did you have hands-on training prior to starting your job, or did you get like all of your hands-on skills once you started your first job?
I didn't have any previous training. I also make sure to let them know whenever they hire me for the donor floor. I told them like I don't have any previous phlebotomy experience. They assured me that it wasn't a problem. I was paired with a trainer. We had a few trainers on the floor, so I was paired with a trainer. By step, she walked me through every process that we need to do on the donor floor. So just starting with the machine, just plain and simple, and then once I master that they kind of let me go through the donor and just have a machine and then move to the next step until I get to the step of actually sticking people. But I started with like a fake arm to try to like make sure that I knew how to properly hold the needle and how to anchor on the arm and the motion of just sticking. And then once I felt comfortable, and of course, once the trainer kind of signed off, or if I was like, okay, I could start trying a few donors, we always like ask first, but we go for people that have like those big veins. That as soon as they're like, oh, I like that vein.
Yeah.
So we start with them, and like most of the people were like really open to have someone just starting doing. I was like, yeah, I've been doing this for a long time. Go ahead. I love it. I have big vein. Have fun with it. So
That's great. It's nice to have those people to get your experience on as you're just getting started.
yes.
So, if you're talking to someone who was a few years behind you and considering a career in phlebotomy, do you have any advice or tips or tricks that you would share with them?
Honestly, I love my career as a phlebotomist, so I would definitely like suggest to go for it because yes, I was like a little skeptical at the beginning just because you're sticking someone. There are a lot of things that can go wrong, but I don't know, I really enjoyed like even if it was for a few minutes being there with a patient, always like advice to literally like be observant because
Mm,
a lot of things can go wrong. And even when you think like, oh yes, I got it, but then the second after you see that the arm like starting getting a little purple and everything. So always keep an eye always on your patient, even when we're finished, because most of them will say, oh yeah, I feel great. And 2 seconds later, their face is pale and they're about to faint.
oh, yeah.
So always keep be observant of everything, not just for that one patient, but always, keep an eye on your section, your patient, whatever your setting might be. I have my section, so always be aware of everything while you're
Yeah.
there and good
That
at
is
multitasking.
Yeah, that is really great advice, honestly. Just being tuned in, great assessment skills, very observant of what's going on with the patient that you're caring for. I think that probably applies to a lot of different roles in healthcare, but particularly important when you're doing something, that is a bit invasive, like a blood draw. So
Yeah.
that is really good advice. Um, what do you think are do you have any thoughts on what are the like essential skills or maybe personality traits that someone should have in order to successfully be a phlebotomist?
Skills, probably like multitasking, depends where you are. That's something that you need because especially I was on the floor and I had to do a lot of things at once, just prioritize, but always keep your patient, an eye on your patient no matter what you're doing. Personality wise, I feel like you still need to be open while you're there and like, have a quick conversation with them, just ask about their or how they are. But at the same time, not just like stay there and like be like really, really chatty. Like I know that whenever I was working there, we were like a couple of people like, please try to make sure to cut the conversation because if I just sit there with someone I don't say you don't have to like have a conversation. Yes, go ahead, what, set up, but try to talk and do what you have to do, especially while you set up the machine. I don't just like kind of stay there and have a whole conversation. Then of course we have people waiting, and then that's on us if they're waiting.
Yeah, absolutely. So that careful balance of having a very present bedside manner while also being very efficient and task oriented, it sounds like might be key.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So tell us a little bit more about what your current role at Trusted is now that you work for us here internally.
Yeah, so now at Trusted, I'm a care coordinator, so part of a care coordinator team. I started about 2 years ago, whenever I moved to Japan. I started from qualification team, and then I went to the nurse advocate coordinator, and then now I moved to the care coordinator team. So I'm part of their pretty much where the one that answer every time that a question comes in for application profiles on hair call, we're the one that first catch the messages and their call.
Awesome. So if a phlebotomist is coming to the Trusted platform and they have a question, they could end up with you in their inbox, which would be a perfect match.
They could, yeah.
What do you think about the ability for phlebotomists and other allied professionals to take travel positions? Is that something that you ever thought about in your career, or something that you reflect on in any way in your current role?
Whenever I started being phlebotomist, I always didn't know that there were like travel position for Allied. And then I started learning whenever I got in with Trusted and whenever we started taking our Allied. And that did bring a few times. I was like, maybe if I decide to go back and do phlebotomist, I might start traveling for a little bit. I honestly like the fact to, find a contract in different places, visiting new states if I can, new places, and just be a phlebotomist.
Yeah, I know. I travel nurse for a handful of years, and I knew a couple travel physical therapists as well. But I would say that I probably also was not fully aware of all of these different professionals that could take travel contracts. And I think that it's so great. If you want to be involved in healthcare, chances are you are working a role that you can take a travel position for and get to experience new places.
Yeah, definitely. If I go back being a phlebotomist, probably might need to do a year or so around here again. See that I've been out for a couple of years, but after that, probably would like to start traveling or like at least
Yeah,
try.
yeah, for sure. It would be fun. Awesome. Well, we'll get ready to wrap up here, but I just have we'll finish off with a few fun rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Early bird.
Okay, so you liked those 6:30 a.m. shifts then.
Yes, I liked it. You still
um,
get out and still have the day.
exactly. I know. I'm with you on that. I'm an early bird as well. Do you have a go-to relaxation technique or something fun that you do to unwind after a long day?
Uh, as mentioned before, my go-to is Krav Maga. It's not really relaxing because it's not like a meditation, but sometimes fighting against a bag or something is kind of relaxing.
Exactly. Get all of that energy out. That's great.
Exactly.
Um, okay, so did you wear scrubs at your facility that you worked at?
We did, yeah.
Okay, are you a fan of the pattern scrubs, or do you go more for the solid colors?
Solid colors. Not much of a fan of old patterns.
I'm with you on that too. Um, cool. And so, what is one thing in healthcare that like makes you queasy? Maybe something that you encountered with like donors or patients that you didn't like.
Oh, when patients were feeling sick and needed to throw up, and I was like, I can't watch that. Nope, can't do that. So I would
Yeah,
only like run to get the bags. I'm like, that's it, but I'm looking the other way.
awesome. Well, Steph, I'm so glad that you hopped on to chat with me today and share a bit about your phlebotomy career with us. I know that it's, all of us here at Trusted are so excited to be offering allied roles now. And I think it's really cool that we have so many clinicians internally here, whether it's nurses, phlebotomists, other allied pros. We've got it all. So I think that it allows us to kind of live vicariously through our travelers, and we really care about their experience. So thanks for coming on and sharing part of your story with us today.
Thank you for having me.